democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. We are on the road in San Francisco. I'm Amy Goodman as we turn to a new focus of some in the anti-war movement here in the U.S. According to the Pakistan newspaper The News, U.S. drone bombings have killed 687 Pakistani civilians since 2006. During that time, U.S. Predator drones carried out 60 strikes inside Pakistan, but hit just 10 of their actual targets. The most recent attack came last Wednesday, just hours after Pakistani officials rejected a U.S. proposal to conduct joint operations in tribal regions near the Pakistani border with Afghanistan. According to the Pakistani newspaper Dawn, Pakistani officials have also asked the U.S. to hand over control of the drone missions in response to growing public outrage. The request came as Defense Secretary Robert Gates announced he would seek a more than 100% increase in funding for the drones. Well, last week, a group of peace activists staged the first major act of civil disobedience against the drone attacks in the United States. On Thursday, 14 people were arrested outside the Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, where the Air Force tests the unmanned drones used in Pakistan. The activists were arrested after holding a 10-day vigil dubbed Ground the Drones. I'm joined now by longtime California peace activist who is among those detained. Father Louis Vitale has been active in social justice movements for over 4 decades. During that time, he's racked up hundreds of arrests and over a year in jail time for his involvement in a number of local and international causes. Last year, he ended a 5-month prison term for staging an anti-torture protest at a military intelligence training center at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. For 12 years, he was pastor at the St. Boniface Catholic Church in San Francisco, co-founder of Pache Bane, a group committed to nonviolent action for social justice. Father Louis joins me here in San Francisco. We welcome you to Democracy Now!
Thank you, Amy. Wonderful
Talk
to be here.
about this last action in Nevada.
Well, I was very excited to do it, Amy. As you can kind of sense, I kind of sense out ever since I got out of the military and kind of turned things around, the 60s and all that. I've always kind of sensed out where the frontiers were from being with Cesar Chavez and King and all of the different movements that have gone on. And we have been out there in that very desert stopping nuclear testing for over 30 years now. And right down the road, we was the testing range where actually it's all connected in Ellis Air Force Base, where the planes going to Afghanistan and the Middle East and before that Vietnam, et cetera, train and discharge. In fact, I was in a prison camp there for protesting at Fort Benning when they all left right from that place to go to Iran 6 years ago. And it was all of a sudden we noticed down the street, which was just a little base supplying the target range there, all of a sudden all these drones start flying. And so we're just thinking, well, they're practicing drones and flying drones. And then we find out that they're bombing and bombing and bombing in Afghanistan. And I started talking to the chaplain, talking to people out there and talking about the effect it's having on even not only in Afghanistan, but on those who are flying the drones. Meanwhile, Kathy Kelly, who you know very well from Voices for Creative Nonviolence, they have been very much tracking what's going on the other side, knowing very well the situation in Afghanistan, Pakistan, et cetera, et cetera. So we came together and we started figuring out, we had started going and already just doing some vigiling there, holding up signs, how something like the drones drown out the groans that come from the people. They don't hear the cries, and neither do we. And getting reactions from some of the crews, the pilot and the sensor operator, the two that are in these little booths, just like arcades, and are actually operating.
Wait,
them.
I want to talk more about this. I said testing the drones in Nevada, but it's actually running.
Oh, absolutely.
The
they fly them from there.
Now, explain what you mean. So someone goes to work in the morning. They drive up from their family.
Exactly what the colonel, the commander, the vice commander from Ellis Air Force Base, exactly as he described it to me. He says, well, you know, it works out rather nicely. They live with their families in Las Vegas. They drive out and drop the kids off at school, drive out in the morning, fly their missions, drop their bombs. They can go home and have dinner with their family in the evening. Only in the meanwhile, what he doesn't quite cover is in the meanwhile, they blew up a school, remember, in Afghanistan? And from what you see from YouTube, in fact, you had P.W. Singer on your show, and he talked about somebody sent him a clip of one of those drones dropping a missile that later, and he saw, you know, the collateral damage right in his face, because the drone hangs around, and they are in that booth for 12 hours. And so they're all day long monitoring what they're doing and seeing it. Then you go home. They have interviews with them and the commanders that have been, particularly in the Las Vegas Review-Journal, in which they talk about, they've got about 40 minutes or so on the way home to kind of shift. You don't get rid of PTSD, instant PTSD, in 20, 40 minutes. In one way, they say it's kind of intriguing because it's just like an arcade. They learn real fast. The pilots are old stock pilots, you know, and they're used to flying, you know, F-14s, F-16s. But the sensor operator was originally there for the cameras. They were basically doing surveillance, intelligence work. But they also carry 4 Hellfires on the early Predators and much more on the Reaper, not only more missiles, but also bombs, 500-pound bombs. And so they guide them in with the lasers right in there, and they see what they do, and then they've got to live with that. And that's a terrible thing to live with.
Can you describe exactly what the action was last week in Nevada?
Sure. We had been there for 10 days, and every day, actually, we had a wonderful reaction from the guys. Even though we had signs that were challenging them, I also mostly held up one that says, support the troops in the war. And they waved. Sometimes they'd stop and talk. You know, we got only one in the whole week did we get a negative sign. But really, they were very approachable. And there's 270 people working to man the drones that are there, and the drone crews. So what it is like, as you were saying, it's like a trailer, an arcade. You have the pilot's station, and you have the sensor station, and then you might have an intelligence person there. But they're right there in Nevada, 40 miles from Las Vegas, and it's just like, and it bounces off a satellite. Actually, the plane has to be taken off and landed in Afghanistan by pilots that are right close there, direct line of sight, because there's 2-second lag bouncing off a satellite, and they would crash if they tried to make an instant correction.
What was the local reaction to the protests that you held last week?
The reaction in Las Vegas, of course, you're pretty far from Las Vegas. The local
or
is
even
really this little
the
Indian
military.
Springs. Well, they were, as I say, I mean, all these people are driving in, and I would be there by 6:30 in the morning, and they all wave. I mean, we'd wave and give signs, and they'd wave, smile. We had one tiny little protest group led by a 17-year-old boy whose father is a retired Air Force veteran who is in Afghanistan, though, servicing the planes, and he's gung-ho to support his country and all that. Of course, his mother was there, parked across the street, and she kept kind of encouraging him, and his sister came out with her cheerleader friends, yay for the USA. But we said, well, we support the USA too, but you know, we don't support so we got talking to him about his desire to immediately enter the military. We had a motel room at Indian Springs for our kind of our coming togethers, and the rest of the motel was completely filled with Marine Air Force types. And we got to be pretty friendly with them, too. So we got into some very good conversations with them.
You were arrested?
But when we were arrested, the local military were not too friendly. They were really nervous, and I think they just came back from Iraq, a couple of them. They had their M16s out, and they were very nervous and it's the kind of scene that, unfortunately, we have seen go down rather quickly. And I was quite nervous. We had very eager people, one elderly woman who's been arrested 100 times more in Washington, D.C., and she's running up to them. And I said, don't do that. When they say stop, stop. And so it got tense for a while. But then when the troopers came in, the state troopers know us very well from our many years in Nevada, and they were actually very friendly, very considerate, because your cuff's too tight. Old man like me with broken shoulders kind of move them around, help you. And they were very positive. So I think the reaction was very good. I think there's a shift going on in America, as I saw Mr. Chomsky talked about just yesterday on your show. There is a movement going on, and I think a lot of people are sensitive to that. But we've got to try to help these young people that are getting kind of pulled in by something that seems so familiar to them. Right out of boot camp, where they were doing arcade games, here they are, only it's real.
In addition to Father Louis, we're joined here in San Francisco by Jeff Paterson from Courage to Resist to address the growing resistance among troops to fighting the ongoing wars in Afghanistan and Pakistan. We welcome you to Democracy Now! Jeff, talk about what you're doing.
Well, our group came together about 3.5 years ago to support the people inside the military who are risking imprisonment and bad discharges in order to voice what they've actually seen in Iraq.